What are the main needs in the transfer portal?
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? And welcome into this Monday edition of the Locked On the Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my fifth year covering the University of Louisville, third year hosting this show. And I want to take the time to personally thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast, free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. On the show today, we're going to identify the three main needs for the Louisville Cardinals in the transfer portal this offseason. We'll discuss Jeff Brohm picking up a huge defensive commitment in the 2026 class from the Sunshine State, and we'll also discuss the women's basketball team's season ending in Fort Worth against TCU on Sunday. Took a couple days off after the men's basketball team season ended. Gave me a little bit of time to get my voice back. And I mentioned on Thursday that it seemed like it couldn't get worse. Well, over the weekend it did. Thankfully, bouncing back from this multiple day sinus infection / allergy attack / congestion extravaganza. But nonetheless, not where it needs to be, but definitely not as bad as it was. So before the portal starts today, but before we start to discuss who was involved with, who's going to come to the program, I felt like it was needed to identify the three main needs for Pat Kelsey's team this offseason. Now, the rosters or the players coming back, that's not finalized. I hope that by this time next week, we have a better understanding of who is returning. There's 6 players who can't return. There's a handful of players who could. We'll see. And then I think that there are some that are likely to come back. But until we see those announcements, things are unknown at the moment. But I feel like these three things are going to be true regardless of who comes back. Now, I've sort of waited to really dive into this segment until I watched the first weekend of games in the NCAA tournament, because you see what works. Now, every year is different, but there are a couple of themes that I'm seeing from teams that are advancing, why the top teams are as good as they are, and much more. So regardless of who can come back and who's not going to come back, I think that these three needs remain true and they hold steady, because it's not really a positional discussion. It's more so like the roles that are filled on a team. I think the first thing, and this is something that hurt Louisville, especially when Rain Smith went down, the Cardinals need to address shooting. Louisville was not really a good three-point shooting team this past season. We're already calling it this past season. This season, we'll call it this season. We won't call it this past season. This season, the Cardinals really weren't all that good of a three-point shooting team. They were streaky. They had players that could hit shots. Rain Smith was great. Now, 33% isn't terrible, but I think that number was inflated by some streaky performances. Rain Smith was a fantastic three-point shooter, 38% from three. Edwards shot 33, Hepburn shot 32.8, and Hadley shot 38%. But you look down the line, Noah Waterman, 29%, Abubakar Traore, 16.7%, Kenai Roots, 23%. Now, I know it hurts when you don't have Case and Pryor, who didn't really have a great three-point shooting start to the season before he went down, but probably would have regressed back to the mean positively. And then Corin Johnson as well. But one thing's for sure, the Cardinals have to add substantially more shooting for next year. Because I feel like if you're going to operate this system that plays quick, that, dives into analytics and really accepts that and embodies it. And you're shooting a lot of threes because the volume didn't really match the numbers of efficiency as it should. And if Louisville shot the ball better, how many of those, well, I mean, I say how many of those losses, like they lost a lot of games, but the Oklahoma game, for example, who knows? The second Duke game in the ACC championship, the Creighton game, who knows if Louisville shoots a little bit better there. But nonetheless, you can't just have one really good shooter. And I look at the guys remaining or guys coming back, and do I think there can be some improvement? Yeah, sure. I think Michael Brown Jr. is going to be a great three-point shooter, or hopefully he is. I think Ali Khalifa has some three-point shooting upside, of course, but of the guys returning, I think that's an area that you need some improvements on, is that perimeter shooting aspect, because you're seeing teams, I mean, Florida, you saw Walter Clayton just go on a heater at the end of the game against UConn. Some big-time shots were made by that team. I mean, there's a reason why the top teams are really good at shooting the three-point shot. Because we saw it multiple times this year, especially at the end, teams just sort of dared Louisville to shoot the ball. They doubled the post. They did their best to eliminate Chucky Hepburn and Terrence Edwards getting into the lane and around the basket. And they said, okay, shoot the basketball. Rain Smith's not on the court. Fine. We trust you all to shoot the ball, and we're just going to stay, around the basket and rebound. And honestly, I mean, look at the game against Creighton. I mean, the shooting efficiencies weren't really all that good at the end of the year. Louisville has to improve in that regard. Number two, I think they need more players that can create off the dribble, especially in the front court. And I think something that comes with that is upgrading the overall athleticism on the team, because what that's going to do is it's going to be able to not only help you offensively, but it's going to also help on the defensive end, where you've seen this year where the Cardinals had trouble staying in front of guys that could do just that, put the ball on the floor and get to the cup. Now, Chucky Hepburn was great at that. Terrence Edwards was great at that. Outside of that, not really all that much. That's where I think that Nate Ament, now granted, if you get a commit from Nate Ament, then this need might come off the board, because that's what he does incredibly well. 6'9", 6'10", long wingspan, gets to the cup, really crafty around the basket. But you look at teams like Arkansas, that's just able to put the ball on the court, use that strength, and finish around the rim. I mean, they took it to St. John's in the second half. That was the most paint points that St. John's had given up all season long. Duke is another team that's able to put it on the floor and get to the basket. Houston, Tennessee, the list goes on, and it's something that is needed. You're a great three-point shooting team. That's great, but I feel like there also has to be the emphasis on increasing that athleticism and being able to create off the dribble, whether that's getting downhill toward the basket or just being able to find open shooters. If you're able to blow by your man and you force that help defense to rotate, you're creating open shots. Not only did teams just sell out on defending Chucky Hepburn and Terrence Edwards, they're like, okay, we're going to allow any of the other players you have on the court to try to take our defenders one-on-one. And it was a successful tactic late on in the season. So that's something for me. Being able to get players that can create off the dribble. I think specifically, regardless of who comes back, you need that 3 or maybe even 4 that can create his own offense and not only be able to shoot the ball, but be able to get to the basket and have that athleticism to finish through contact. And number 3, this, again, these aren't really ranked. I know I'm reading them 1, 2, 3, but these are sort of like 1A, 1B, 1C. You need toughness on the interior. You need and that comes on both sides. And this really doesn't only apply to the front court, but again, watching March Madness and you're seeing players crash the boards, guards that rebound well, Jemiah Neal for Creighton, big men that are creating second chances for their team, getting the rebound and putting it back up. Those second chance points are huge, and I think that it is something that Louisville missed dearly. And look, I think that James Scott grew this year, and I thought he had a good sophomore campaign, but it's pretty clear that he does need to develop substantially on the offensive end between this year and next year, and hopefully he's able to you'll be able to take that leap. I like that Louisville has Sananda Frew coming in. I think he's going to help with that. A Kason Pryor coming back could definitely help with that, especially on the defensive end. But an issue that I had with the portal haul last year that I feel like sort of could be the same this year's, I feel like you need to get that size and strength in the front court, because too many times, I mean, look, when Louisville played Kalkbrenner, they didn't really have an answer. Now, he was an All-American, but same was for Maxime Reynaud. Same was for some other players against California. You need that player that, although they might not have a ton of range, you can put them in to bang down low, to just be a physical force around the basket. As long as you have a decent post game, I mean, that's all you need to ask for. Giving yourself some more offense somewhere where Louisville just did not have a post game this year. Their post game was Terrence Edwards getting guys off balance, doing a bunch of spin moves and finishing around the basket. Like Louisville really, and then Javon Hadley as well. But I think that you need that toughness on the interior offensively. You also need it defensively. James Scott, I felt like, improved on defense throughout the year. I thought he showed that he could defend the perimeter pretty well, but he wasn't the greatest shot blocker. I think that Louisville, again, you don't have to go out and get the most elite shot blocker in the country, but you need to have some rim protection. You need to have a guy that teams look at and you're like, ooh, well, let's think twice about taking it into the lane on this player. And I like, again, it's not really a positional thing, because it doesn't really apply to just one player. I think it's something that the whole team needs to embody. Like, you need a team that's better at shooting. You need a team that's better at creating off the dribble outside of two players. You need a more athletic team, and you need a team that's tougher on the interior on both ends of the court. So I'm excited about this upcoming month. I know that there was the post put out there by Pete Nakos from On3 Sports that talked about, what the budget could look like for Louisville basketball this offseason. There was a number floated around like 8 to 10 million. That's a really good number, even considering the revenue sharing that kicks in at the end of this year. So if that number is true, then there's really no excuse not to overhaul this roster. And there's some pieces that returning that are going to help next year. I do think that you do need to just do whatever you can to, yes, make sure you get the fits right, but let's go for it next year. What's stopping Louisville from bringing in a roster that could potentially compete for a national title next year? So really excited for the portal offseason. Something I'm also really excited about is how well Jeff Brohm and company are recruiting in the 2026 class. Another solid defensive commitment for the Cardinals football program. We'll tell you all about Kevontay Hugan when we come back on this Monday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Card Nation, I want to take the time again to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. I do want to take the time to tell you what the upcoming schedule for the week is going to look like, because things change so wild at the moment, because when the portal opens, you just really never know, right? So the real answer is we'll see. But I would like to have a two-part series on grading and giving out report cards for individual players for the men's basketball team this year. If I have to condense it to one episode, Not going to be ideal, but I'll do it if I have to. So that will come up at some point this week, just a heads up, and then we'll have portal talk and stuff like that. But on the football side of things, I mean, Jet Brohm and company, they're still on fire. They're picking up some big-time commitments, and I feel like the people who are the happiest about this are those that were the loudest about not really being as comfortable with the extremely portal-heavy model in terms of recruiting. And again, I go back to this point that I feel like the most healthy way to do it is right there in the middle. Like, I don't think only recruiting the high school ranks is a sustainable business model for college football in the current day and age with NIL. But I also don't think that at the moment you can't go too portal heavy, because we've seen that the market is just super inflated, and it's unless you just have an unlimited war chest of resources, it's really hard to go out and fill all those needs when there's so many teams that are just throwing out big time money. And look, and I don't think the answer was ever like Louisville has to just recruit on a level like Ohio State or Texas, but I think what most fans wanted to see, or there was a good portion of it. And look, I will also say that you've won at least 9 games the past 2 seasons. So whatever you're doing is working, but it feels like there is a different mindset for this class. If you compare the past 2 classes to this one, I mean, this one is looking like a vintage Louisville class where you go out and you get some really talented high 3-star, low 4-star guys. You get a couple 4-stars in the class, and you develop them, because contrary to popular belief, player retention is a lot easier than new player addition, especially in terms of finances. So Louisville is recruiting at a really high level, and they're recruiting the Bluegrass State really well, and they are doing what they usually do and recruiting the Sunshine State well too. So they just got a commitment over the weekend from Kevontay Hugan. I think it's Hugan, Hugan. If you look at the rankings, number 1 player in the class currently, according to 24/7 Sports, where he's the 35th best player in the state of Florida. Doesn't have a current ranking in the top 24/7, but according to the composite ranking, he is 411th in the country, 41st best defensive lineman, 58th best player in the state of Florida, 6'2", 6'3" in the 235 to 245 range. Has a good amount of solid offers, really good offers. Indiana, Georgia Tech, Maryland, Miami, Penn State, Syracuse, USC, Vanderbilt, Virginia Tech, Wake Forest. The list goes on. So there is a significant amount of power for interest. The issue with Hugan is that he's pretty clearly a tweener with his size. Now, he doesn't really have the length to this is sort of the prototypical fear, right? This isn't my opinion. This is sort of, looking at the measurables. Might not have the length to project to be a really good edge rusher, but doesn't really have the size to move inside at the moment and be really disruptive from the interior. Now, what is true is that he is tested really well, is a member of the track and field team, so has that explosive first step, a really good motor, and that burst is incredible. I mean, you watch the film, and I mean, that first step is nasty. I asked Brian Smith, a Locked On Podcast Network national recruiting analyst, what he thought of Hugan. Now, Brian has a background of recruiting in the state of Florida, so he has a really good pulse on Sunshine State recruiting. He said tweener with a high motor, with a good first step, and plays with a chip on his shoulder. Now, these numbers that I'm going to tell you, I mean, these are video game numbers. Last year for Booker High School, which is in the Sarasota area, this is wild. Excuse me. Excuse me. 118 tackles, 36 tackles for loss, and 18 sacks. That's incredible. I mean, regardless of where you're playing, I mean, those are some incredible numbers. But regardless, I think that you have to question, what's his role going to be like at the next level? Do you think that he can put on weight to be more of a 3 tech? Or is he a guy that, even though he doesn't have that length, he's got the motor, he's got that mentality, and he's got that burst to where he can play as a 5 tech on the edge. And I think that's where he probably fits best, judging based upon the film, is a 5 tech. But it could explain why he's not being, recruited heavily by the in-state programs, is because, he doesn't really fit to one place or the other. It could be why he's a little bit lower ranked. And Louisville's like, you know what? We believe in the motor. We believe in the burst. Let's go out there and make him a priority. And he's going to be on campus for an official visit, I think, June 13th. So excited to see what he can bring to the Cardinals program. Hopefully he stays committed. So really like what Louisville's doing on the recruiting side of things. Currently, they have the 7th best class, according to 24/7 Sports. And hopefully they can stay within that range through signing day. So we will see. When we come back, we're going to discuss the women's basketball team's season-ending loss at TCU. Rough game for Jeff Walls' team. There is hope for the future, however, we'll discuss when we come back on this Monday edition of the show. One experience that I really don't think you can replicate that much is the ability to watch your favorite team live. And that's been something that I've really loved to do, is watch Louisville play amongst all sports. Getting tickets really shouldn't be stressful. That's where Game Time comes in, making it easier than ever to grab last-minute tickets at unbeatable prices. Curation makes it easier to find better value with Game Time picks for sports, concert, comedy, and theater. With seat views before you buy. There's no surprise fees and a lowest price guarantee that gives you the peace of mind so you can book with total confidence. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. You knew the committee was going to do it this year because they tried last year, tried pairing Louisville with Hailey Van Lith. Now, Louisville lost in the first round last year and couldn't play against Van Lith's LSU Tigers. Well, this year she goes to TCU for her final season of eligibility. Has a really good year. Big 12 Player of the Year for the TCU Horned Frogs. They get the 2 seed. Louisville gets the 7 seed in that little Fort Worth regional. Louisville ends up beating Nebraska in the first game. TCU advances, setting up the game of storylines, if you will. And it started out really, really positive for Louisville. Jada Curry. I was sitting there looking at a tweet from Sydney Curry before the episode, so my apologies there. Jada Curry was incredible to start the game. She had 15 quick points, had 15 of Louisville's 17. The Cardinals had a 4-point lead in this game in the first quarter. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is going to be really, really interesting here, right? The Cardinals are going to be able to maybe dictate the pace of this game. They were defending Hailey Van Lith well, and then TCU just sort of woke up. And Louisville really couldn't hit shots, and a 17-13 lead for Louisville turned into a 30-17 point lead for TCU. And the Horned Frogs just really did not look back. The Cardinals only scored 9 points in the second quarter, got outscored by 18, and that's where it hurt them. TCU shot 63% from the field, 61% from three, and made 16 free throws. And whenever you're playing a team that's shooting like that, man, it's going to be tough to beat them. Open shots or not, it's going to be tough to beat them. It seemed like Louisville's game plan coming into this game was completely to try to make everyone else beat you. They doubled Hailey Van Lith a lot, and what that resulted in was Van Lith recording 10 assists in this game. She had 16 points and 5 rebounds, but you look up and down the line, 4 of 4 from 3, 3 of 5 from 3, 4 of 7 from 3. Most of the damage came from 3 players, but TCU was able to just go out there and just shoot the lights out, really. Their bench, they had 2 players come off the bench for a combined 6 total minutes, but they didn't really get in foul trouble. They did what they needed to do. And outside of Jada Curry, who had a career high 41 points, we'll end up losing by 15. Olivia Cochran had 15 points on 5 of 12 shooting, but outside of that, no other player was in double figures. Amari Berry had 8 points, and then rough go for Taj Roberts, who was 1 of 10 from the field. She had 2 points. Nyla Harris had 2 points. Jalea Williams didn't score, and it was just a rough game. I felt like this season was all about handling adversity, growing up, going through those pains early on, and just learning how to play with one another. A really young team in the grand scheme of things when the majority of the team is made up by freshmen and underclassmen. But you did have that leadership built in. Jada Curry, Olivia Cochran, Jalea Williams, Nyla Harris, Marissa Russell, sorry. It sucks that the road ends here for the seniors. Can't even begin to state how appreciative we are as a fan base of their impact. I know it's been up and down, but definitely appreciate what they brought to this program. The future is bright. Of course, you have a good amount of the nucleus coming back. Will they return everyone? I'm not sure. The portal is so unpredictable, so we'll see who ends up going, who ends up staying. But I feel like you've got a good foundation set for next year. I mean, you bring Nyla Harris back likely. You have, Taj Roberts, McKinley Randolph, Amari Berry, Arenas, Jeffermans, Lith. The list goes on. You've got some players coming in the recruiting class. I do feel like Louisville needs to go to the portal and sort of get those, 4-ish, maybe 5-ish difference makers that can fill out the rotation. I think that Louisville needs to go get a transfer portal guard. I think you need to bring some experience and some size to the front court. If you can go get that premier shot blocker in the portal, I'm really excited for next year. I think that Jeff Walls had one of his more impressive coaching seasons of his Louisville career. Doesn't really look that way, considering the Cardinals ended the year 22-11. But with how tough the ACC was, with some of the battles and tests that they had in the non-conference schedule, and to be able to play their best ball at the end of the year, being as young as they are, I credit the coaching staff and I credit these players for being able to just stay committed to the process and understand that, yeah, it might be rough early on, but we can still bounce back. And I thought that they did that, and they got some big-time wins in 2025. So excited for the future with both of the basketball programs and, of course, the football program as well. That is going to wrap up this Monday edition of the show. Everyone have a great day. We'll see you right back here